All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 3. So this week we're going to be discussing the National Counterterrorism Center and some other counterterrorism strategies, specifically community policing. There's a couple of short videos explaining how the National Counterterrorism Center functions. Neither video is longer than 5 minutes. And then there's 3 readings for this week: a report by Schanzer and other authors discussing community policing to prevent violent extremism, an article by Lee discussing community policing in an age of homeland security after 9/11, and a report concerning how to integrate complex national missions. That report was a comprehensive study of the National Counterterrorism Center's mission and its ability to integrate whole of government counterterrorism capabilities. So the Directorate of Strategic Operational Planning is part of the NCTC, National Counterterrorism Center. It's the first dedicated whole of government planning cell for counterterrorism. It's supposed to provide the quote-unquote connective tissue between national counterterrorism policy and strategy established by the President through the National Security Council and counterterrorism operations conducted by the departments and agencies. So it's supposed to be what connects everything, policy and practice, together. Overall, the study team found, we'll call it Directorate of Strategic Operational Planning, DSOP. Overall, the study team found that DSOP has made significant progress toward its mandate. However, there still are several impediments. First is often a common impediment when something new is created. There's a wide variety of activities, but not everyone is aware of everything that DSOP is involved in. And then you have issues that are common in bureaucracies. Okay, relationships are not well established. Overlapping authorities. Okay, those things happen in bureaucracies. Other things such as the fact that current methods to prioritize resources and investments were not adequate for the national missions, but rather for departments more specific to this particular agency. There's a lot of good information in this report discussing how the NCTC was formed, what DSOP does, and how the NCTC is supposed to function. Be sure to read through it. And then the final 2 articles discuss the use of community policing. So in the Lee article, he discussed the relevance of community-oriented policing in an age of homeland security policing. So in the 80s and 90s, community policing was highly promoted, highly supported by the federal government. Millions of dollars were available in grants for the departments that wanted to convert to a community-oriented policing department from the more traditional, legalistic type of police organization. So, was it a success? Was debatable, right? There's just the amount of success at conversions of the departments. There are a lot of reasons why, and that's a whole other discussion, and something that I should talk about some in CRM 750. But the main point is community policing was very important in the 1990s. It was supposed to, kind of bridge this gap that we've always been talking about with, the communities and the police, and so the 1990s were dedicated to community policing. Then 9/11 happened, 2001, right? So after 9/11, the federal government shifted their focus, both policy-wise and also monetarily, to other priorities, more focused on homeland security. The shift to policing with homeland security in mind was thought to at least create the shift back to a more legalistic and crime control approach rather than community policing, kind of back to what this was before 9/11 happened. So kind of the main question that we're going to be kind of focusing on here in this article, in this reading and also the other article is Homeland Security policing and community policing compatible or incompatible, right? Can you do both? So Lee found that they were compatible. And I think it's safe to say that Homeland Security policing and community-oriented policing can work hand in hand. Relationships developed within the community from community policing could certainly be beneficial from a Homeland Security perspective. Both interagency and community partnerships are created and cultivated. And those are certainly effective, or can be effective at least, at thwarting potential terrorist plots. Maybe even as effective as all these new technologies that we have. Kind of this good old-fashioned just relationships and working together. And community policing certainly has a role in Homeland Security and counterterrorism. All right, so then you have the Schanzer article. He also Schanzer and several others also discussed the role of community policing in counterterrorism. The article discusses a study that was in support of President Obama's national strategy for countering violent extremism, and they found that community policing could be effective for counterterrorism, but everyone had to be aware that there were issues of mistrust with the Muslim community for a variety of reasons, some of which they felt as if they were being targeted by the police, even if it was for community policing, right? So they felt like they were being directly targeted with these community policing programs instead of the police engaging all aspects of the community instead of just Muslim Americans. So even though the police were trying to be proactive and create these relationships and whatever with the Muslim community, the Muslim community oftentimes felt like they were being specifically targeted by the police. There were also issues that they really didn't trust the police, so they kind of looked like some of this community outreach was just possibly a cover for more intrusive policing tactics. Local police also need to be aware that things that happen in other parts of the country also can impact their ability to work with locals. I think it's obviously true if you look at some of the events that have happened in the last little bit. Obviously, that happens. Some of the other issues impacting community policing's effectiveness are budgetary issues, time constraints. Building relationships takes time and it takes money. You can't just walk in someplace and be like, "Hey, here we are. Let's be friends. Let's work together." Right? That takes time. You have to build trust. You have to build these relationships, and that takes time and money. And oftentimes, police departments don't want to invest that kind of time, or they don't have that time. Let's say they're understaffed. They don't have the money to focus on that. Community outreach programs also need to address all the needs in the community, not just violent extremism. Right? Community policing is supposed to be, more this holistic approach to policing. So it shouldn't just focus on violent extremism. It needs to focus on all the things that ail that particular community. Also need to have appropriate types of training, including some training from community members. If there are specific things about that particular community that the police need to know, cultural things, whatever it is. Sometimes engaging the community in training opportunities also can help build these kind of relationships. So kind of nutshell it here. Community policing can be very effective preventing violent extremism and terrorism, but police need to be mindful about how they approach it and the groups that they're trying to contact and engage with. All right, I'm going to end there for today. Be sure to read all the readings, complete the assignments for this week. As always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to get a hold of me. I'll see you next week.